Okay, let's get going. Good morning, everybody. We have some on Zoom and some in person today for the presentation. So this is a courtesy meeting, informational meeting being provided by the Stormwater Utility Advisory Work Group for the town of Air. My name is Dan Van Scalquick. I'm the DPW director on the work group, and maybe we should just go around and have introductions just so we know everybody and where they're from.
Good morning, Robert Pombrand, the Air Town Manager, and thank you all for attending this morning.
Emily Sherbo, I'm from Time Bond, I'm the Stormwater Practice Leader.
Jonathan Kranz, Chair of the Planning Board and a member of the Stormwater Utility Advisory Group.
Yep, I'm Matt Herman. I'm with the DPW, town engineer, and the most part of the work group.
Jeff Partridge, I'm the EHS manager at Catania Oils.
Oh, great.
Thomas Dirk, town resident as of last year and the wastewater supervisor at Nasoya.
Great.
CJ Moore from Moore Lumber.
Heather Hanson, the conservation agent and a member of the work group.
Okay, and on Zoom, Rita.
Good morning, Rita Major, Regional Director of Environmental for the Berkshire and Eastern Railroad. Good morning.
Good morning. Joe Basile.
Joe Basile, Catania Oils.
Richard Conway. Yeah. Yeah, we can't hear you. James.
Yep, good morning, guys. I'm James Carhart. I'm the plant manager here at CPF. Rick Conway is the EHS manager here at CPF.
Oh, great. Okay. And who am I missing? Brian?
Brian Brennan.
Brent? You here?
Good morning. Yes, Brent Azo, Director of Environmental Compliance, on behalf of the Berkshire and Eastern Railroad.
Okay. And Brian Myers. Can you hear us?
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, Brian Myers with the Berkshire and Eastern.
okay, great. All right, that's everyone who's here. So why don't we get going? So I have a presentation. So the way it'll work, I have a presentation, the work group does, what we put together to provide information about what's being considered by the town of Air. And also the current rate structure and fee that is being considered for a stormwater enterprise fund. So we'll kind of start from the very beginning, go over everything. And enlighten everybody as to what a stormwater enterprise is, why it's being looked at. And then what the fees are. And then I think we'll try to hold questions for the end because they'll probably get answered throughout the presentation. So I'd like to try to do that, but all right, let me share the screen here. There. Can everybody see the presentation on Zoom?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay, great.
With the slideshow.
Yeah. All right. Gotta move this thing. Hold on, I'm trying to move. Can't move it. Oh, there we go. Wait, like slide in. Anyway. All right. Yeah, so informational meeting, the consideration of a stormwater enterprise fund, the town of Air. And so here are some members of the Stormwater Utility Advisory Work Group are here. We are a work group that is advising to the select board. We'll get more into that. There we go. The purpose of today's meeting, or the purpose of the work group rather, is to evaluate and develop a stormwater utility fund. That is an enterprise fund, so something similar to, we have a water enterprise fund, we have a sewer enterprise fund, solid waste, etc. And this would be presented to the select board as an option to consider or for funding stormwater management. Currently, stormwater management is funded through the tax base. So the goal of today's meeting, provide background and draft findings to stakeholders and make them aware of this proposal. So a list of work group members is available here, and also we have time bond for consultant support. Why don't we get into some background? Jonathan, do you want to touch base?
So I want to put this into some context. I've heard people say, well, if this is a rain tax. And because they rightfully acknowledge that rain is free. However, the consequences of managing rain are not free and never have been free and never will be free. And that's because of the distinction that you see on the screen between undeveloped land and developed land. Undeveloped land has natural ways of managing sudden storm events. The ground itself allows percolation of the water into the soil. You have streams and brooks that collect water and direct them into lakes and ponds. You have floodplains that it can absorb breaches of riverbanks and stream banks. But as soon as we get into development, if you could hit the next slide, please. We get into a whole nother kind of surface texture, the impermeable surface through which water cannot penetrate. As a consequence, all those natural factors that would have handled the stormwater for us don't function effectively. And now it's up to us to direct where that water goes. As Dan had said earlier, previously, this had all been done through our general fund, general taxation. But I think a confluence of a few things that we're going to get into, that we're going to expand is one, there's been decades of neglect. As you're all aware, the United States is well behind in managing its infrastructure and has been for decades. And the second thing is that with climate change, we can anticipate that things are going to get worse, not better, that we're going to see more frequent and more intense storms. So it's incumbent upon us not only to catch up, but to be prepared for what we know is coming. Yeah.
Thank you, Jonathan. All right, a little more background, AIR's responsibilities. So as a town, AIR is permitted regulatory through the Mass DEP MS4 permit. That's Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System, MS4. And so that's any stormwater discharges we have are regulated by that permit. So it involves, several criteria that we have to meet with stormwater control and management. Infrastructure that the town is in ownership of, 22 miles of drainage pipe, over 1,000 catch basins, 373 drain manholes, 143 outfalls, 84 culverts. And then we have natural drainage conveyances as well as what we like to call BMPs, 21 map treatment units, detention basins. Those are best management practices or items that are used to treat the stormwater before it's discharged. So here's just a map of the town of Air. This is our MS4 map. And what you can see on here is obviously Air is known for its ponds, and those jump out at you because they're color coded on here. And as part of this MS4 management, we have to identify which water bodies have water quality impairments. And so these are identified on here. And so this, through the regulation of the EPA MS4 permit, we have to, treat our stormwater to a certain level to help reduce those impairments. This is our map we use overall for our MS4 program. There's a lot more on here than just that, but it's a good start for us. MS4, I'm not going to get too far into this, but there's 5 called minimum control measures that we have to meet: public education outreach, illicit discharge, only rain down the drain, anything else shouldn't be going in there, etc. But the permit does require a good amount of work for the town to meet. Historic funding approach. So the town historically, it's been allocating funds, we mentioned, through the town's general fund, so the tax base. And the approach has been reactive. Right. We've been, repairing infrastructure when it becomes a necessity. I have some examples of that further into the PowerPoint. We do have a lack of maintenance that's being done. There just hasn't been a proper program to maintain our system up to par. And with the challenges we're looking at in the future, as you look at climate change, if we don't start, being proactive and actually taking care of our system in a better manner, it's not going to bode well. It's the bottom line got cut off. It says the town's record information on the stormwater system is poor. So our water and sewer systems, we have very good mapping on, but stormwater throughout the years was kind of the left behind. It was kind of hodgepodge together. When there was an issue, a drain pipe would just get put in and discharged to wherever. But so we're trying to get good mapping and fix those issues. Just recently, what's been done in 2022, we finished a stormwater asset management plan. I brought the hard copy here. And basically, what it was,
Actually, hold it up so people can see how
Yeah.
big this thing is, because this
Yeah.
is notable.
it's
Okay.
pretty thick. So basically what the town did is the town, through its municipal vulnerability preparedness program, identified stormwater as the highest priority, highest vulnerability for the town. And through that program, recommended a stormwater asset management plan. So through grant funding, the town was able to develop a stormwater asset management plan. And so that'll give us a criticality, risk-based approach to maintaining our stormwater system. And so Time Bond did the plan. They went out in the field, evaluated some of our system, not all of it, and developed an asset management based approach to maintain the system. Also going on as time moves forward, the EPA MS4 permit further develops. The most recent permit was 2016, and we're expecting another one within a year, and it'll be more stringent. And then in 2021, the select board and town meeting did authorize funding to evaluate, consider stormwater enterprise fund, and that's what we're showing you today.
I think-
Jonathan, you want to touch base?
I do. I think a fair question to ask is why are we doing this now? And if you recall from a previous slide that Dan walked us through, you may have been surprised to learn that there is as many as 1,082 catch basins, 373 drain manholes, 84 culverts, etc. And that's because when the stuff works, it's largely invisible. We don't think about it. And that's what we want. We want ultimately the destination is that we don't even think about stormwater because it's appropriately managed. But there are things that are changing right now. First, as I said earlier, we're anticipating the effects of climate change, which means more frequent storms that are more damaging and larger. This is incredibly important. First of all, it's our property, it's our homes, it's our businesses, it's our public spaces that we want to protect. But also on top of that, it's the knock-on consequences. What happens to transportation and transit? What happens to our roads during these critical events? And that leads us to the next step, which is ensuring economic continuity. In addition to the literal physical damage the storms can do without without the system being properly maintained, there is the knock-on effect. So what would 2 to 3 days of economic disruption mean? What would 2 to 3 days without get your inventory in or your vendors being able to access you? How would 2 to 3 days of not being able to get your output out or being your customers able to physically reach you? And that combined with the escalating cost of infrastructure repairs, that many of them are coming towards their end of their life and many of them need work real soon, or we can anticipate needing work within 5 to 10 years. All this combined creates an urgency where our most responsible, least expensive option is to tackle the issue now and get ahead of it. Could you do the next slide?
Yeah. Yeah, so trying to put this into numbers, this thing keeps getting in the way. So flooding costs us all. So I was trying to put it into numbers, how much it costs us all. The US Congress Joint Economic Committee is also trying to do that. And they came out with a report of how much it costs to commercial businesses. So whenever there's flooding, essentially looking at the pie graph in short, about 40% of the costs of that flooding issue that occurs is going to affect commercial businesses either directly or indirectly due to downtime, direct loss output, things like that. It's really hard to, do apples and apples, but this is a report that seemed to somewhat apply to what we're getting at with flooding costing, not just the people, but also the businesses.
So just to help out, so the numbers can be small, but what I'm seeing is 15.9% for structural damage, the actual physical assets. 31.6, close to a third of direct commercial impact from lost output. And then another large chunk, 27.1 for indirect due to downtime days. So I just wanted to highlight those numbers for you.
Next.
Oh, yeah.
So many of us are probably aware of the Leominster floods that occurred in September 2011, September 11, 2023. And they received 10 inches of rain in 4 hours. Luckily in air, we only received 2.5 inches of rain during that storm. And in air, there was very minimal flooding. Markham Circle, there was some flooding, and we did have the rotary overtopping. But there was, up to $40 million in damages to city infrastructure in Leominster. So, an event like that's very extreme, but we're starting to see more of them.
Yeah,
Recently in southwest Connecticut, they had a similar event occur a few days ago. So we really need to have a robust infrastructure and be prepared for what's coming in the future. Now I'm just gonna show some images from around town of some stormwater issues we see. So this was actually on private property. There was a sinkhole of a private culvert causing stormwater to back up and flood. The business luckily was able to still drive its trucks in and out of there, but they did have to repair the culvert. This is in 2023 up on Pleasant Street. There was a drainage failure. So this is once again, our reactive approach to maintaining stormwater. We hadn't inspected that pipe probably ever downstream of there. So maintenance is lacking. And so we find out about it when we get a backup, and it's backing up onto private property, but luckily there wasn't any damage other than heading down their lawn. So we did have to have a project and use our, annual stormwater funds that we have through the tax base to address that. That was done in 2023.
Wow.
Kind of currently, 2 more stormwater issues that have popped up through our reactive approach are Linden Court. There's a backup, a broken drain line that we need to relay. And also down on Bly Street, there is some significant flooding there due to the drainage system not properly configured. So those are going to be addressed probably in the spring. We have a design ready, but we need to permit that as well. This is the Devon's Crest neighborhood, and kind of throughout there, there's several catch basins that back up like this, don't take the water. And, the water ultimately does end up at catch basins further down the street, but there can be significant water traveling down the roadway during those events because they're not going down every drain like they should. So that area in general has poor drainage, and we just haven't been proactive about addressing it. Nashua River, and this happens, this recurs, maybe not too often, but this was in 2023, flooding down there. So McPherson Road was impassable, and you'll note that gets.
Right, so if you've ever driven by and you've seen the gates locked,
Yeah.
this is
Yeah.
why they're locked.
Yeah. So this was actually, it's not town owned, but the Mass DOT Rotary stormwater basin. There was poor maintenance here. Their overflow was covered with debris. And we've actually gone out the DPW, air DPW, and cleaned it off every so often because they weren't doing it, but no one had cleaned off of the stormwater overflow. So all the water backed up and overtopped the rotary and washed out down into the wetlands. So good news. This was West Main Street over by the Devon's Plaza. The town, through a MassWorks grant, did replace the drainage in this segment. So, as we move forward, we look for grant opportunities. We do have some local appropriations. We're appropriating more to become proactive. But these are upgrades that are well needed. More improvements this past year on 3rd Street. When we replaced the water main. Whenever we replace a water main, we look at other infrastructure on the road as well and try to replace that, assuming we have proper funding. And then we do some culvert replacements, usually smaller culverts. The big ones are very costly. This was one on High Street, a 36-inch culvert we were able to do a few years ago. But a lot of them do look, in poor condition like this. We have a lot of corrugated metal pipe in our drainage, and it really rots out the bottom of the pipe. Outfall improvements, so in accordance with our MS4 permit and just general good practice for our waterways and the water quality of them. So we do have rain gardens and treatment units. These are a couple recently installed. On the top left is over by Grove Pond at Marshall and 3rd Street, a new rain garden bioretention cell. And down the bottom right is off of Groton Harvard Road in an easement. Yeah. So that was kind of a trip around town. Let me get my notes I can't see the top of the slide. Revenue projections. So historically, the 5-year average, the town has appropriated approximately $240,000 a year funding for stormwater, and that includes all hard and soft costs. So hard being construction, actually physical work out there, soft being any engineering needed for, MS4 permit requirements, things like that. So it's not a lot when you're trying to do capital projects like culvert replacements. In future years, we are increasing our capital and operating to quote unquote right size the stormwater management program. And we're using our stormwater asset management plan as a guide to drive the funding we need to be proactive. We also have more stringent MS4 permits expected as we go further into the future, which will add more cost. So everyone here can see. So right sizing for proper asset management. So FY 2023 and before, on the left column of this slide, we were funding repairs on roads that we would pave, looking at small culvert replacements, responding to emergencies, and then doing our annual catch basin cleaning and street sweeping. So that's basically what we were budgeting for. That was our reactive approach. Moving forward, right sizing the management, the town is looking at an average of 700K, probably roughly a year, up to $1 million. And that really fluctuates based on if there's a major culvert replacement. And so we've already started funding toward that level through the tax base. So this would include all the items mentioned on the left side of the screen, but we'd also add on additional pipe replacements, not just the roads we're paving, additional culvert permitting, design, construction projects would flow. And we would space those out to properly, financially be able to do those. Obviously, respond to emergencies, cleaning, sweeping. And then as we get further down, we really haven't followed up well at all with private stormwater treatment systems. So as part of the MS4 permit, the town is responsible for private stormwater and making sure that that is being properly maintained. So there are long-term operation and maintenance plans for the private properties that have stormwater systems. So we would start doing that better, do further mapping, data collection, asset condition assessment, pipe cleaning, CCTV. Our actual maintenance of our stormwater BMPs would become more robust, and our GIS data, which is basically our data repository of all the stormwater infrastructure we own, we would keep that up to date, be more robust and be ahead of things. Next.
May I?
Yeah, sure.
So that puts us where we are now in the discussion of options. One is that we could just expand the funding through the general fund, which means a higher tax rate for everyone. That would give us greater revenues, but there is the increase in the tax rate if we went that route. Plus is the fact that whenever you have general funds, you're confronted with conflicting needs. And when conflicting needs happen, there's a process of which is most important or more urgent, let's say, more urgent, and then things can be neglected or put aside. If we go through an enterprise fund, that means there's dedicated fee money just for the stormwater. It can't be moved to some other aspect of the budget. It allows DPW and other agencies here to have more control and rational planning. And the third option is just to keep on doing what we're doing today, right now. And I hope that through all the slides you've previously seen, the data that we've shown you, that the third option is absolutely unacceptable. We can't just do nothing because we know that's going to be catastrophic. We already know there are major culverts that need to be replaced. We know the issue is here.
Thanks. Okay, so evaluating a stormwater enterprise fund, what are some of the advantages? So this slide kind of sums it up in general. Asset management plan, the town of Air's drainage system, the value of it is replacement value is worth over $90 million. So it's a significant asset that needs to be maintained. Small MS4 general permit, as mentioned before, we expect more stringent requirements needed, including possibly at some point in the future, further requirements to address stormwater on private property. Benefits of a stormwater enterprise fund. So these are key here. Jonathan touched on some of these. You know, it's a stable, dedicated revenue source for financial sustainability. So we know the assets, we know how much it is to maintain, we know what to address through the asset management plan. How do we fund that, you know, with a proper level of service for the people and businesses of town? And we can keep that stable. Equitability and fairness. So based on stormwater impact versus property value taxes, can't include tax exempt properties. We'll kind of get a little more into equity, and basically impervious area is the key. We'll get into that in a few slides. Flexible, utility can pay for all aspects of the program. Jonathan mentioned that. An enterprise fund would be dedicated to stormwater. And then on the bottom, it's cut off here on our screen, but it's credit policy, and this is important. So if a private property were to install or has installed stormwater management for their impervious area that meets the requirements of the credit policy, they can have a credit to their stormwater fee. And we'll get a little more into that too. This is again, just more table. Why consider general fund, enterprise fund? I think we discussed most of this at this point, so I'm gonna skip over this one. And just, this is not a new concept. You know, this map is a little outdated on the right. There's actually several more stormwater utility funds around New England. As of May 2024, there's 31 plus. I know Groton's not on here. There's one in there. Westford's on there, Pepperell, yeah. So there's several more in here, and so it's not a new concept. But the bottom bullet, impervious area, it's the most commonly used method to assess stormwater fees because of the direct impact impervious area has on stormwater quality. So short,
that guy.
yeah, here's a short video just on impervious area and the correlation with stormwater.
Here we are, Main Street and Air. So when it's raining and you have impervious surfaces, meaning the water can't travel through, then it travels on top and it travels really fast. So looking down Pleasant Street here, you can see a flow of water just entering this catch basin here and quickly heading out to our waterways. It's still raining here, the same rain we just saw on Pleasant Street, Main Street and Air, where it was running into the catch basin through the gutter line. But out here in Pine Meadow Conservation Area, you don't see any water running. There's no channelized flow. Even under these tree canopies, there's dry spots because the trees are holding it up above it. So
we have a lot more information too, and we'll mention this later. We have a repository. The website we have for this work group has a lot of information on them. There's a lot more to impervious area. This was just a short video that I created going through the process.
here it is.
All right, the next slide. Emily, do you want to touch base on the efforts?
Sure, I can do that. Okay, so Dan previously had showed a slide of who is involved with the working group. So we have a good cross section of town staff, residents, other stakeholders in that group. But we convened in September 2023. So we've been working on this for a while now. And some of the things that we've been working on, not only did we take a hard look at the current budget and whether or not that was adequate, we looked at what is coming in the future budget, you know, starting with the asset management plan, but really trying to understand, is the town meeting their goals and objectives for their stormwater management program? And as you heard from Dan and Jonathan already, the answer was really no. So there is some need for an increased source of revenue. So with that information, we were able to use a rate model and developed some rate structure alternatives. We developed draft regulations to really codify some of the policy decisions we made and how this would all work. We developed a credit policy with application forms, and then we have been doing lots of outreach and public engagement because we thought collectively it's really important for everybody to know what's going on, have plenty of opportunities to read through the materials, provide feedback, ask questions, and then ultimately this is going to be a recommendation to the select board and it will be before town meeting. All right, so a little more about this. So again, the question that comes up when you start thinking about a stormwater utility is how are you measuring stormwater? It's not like your water bill where we have a meter and we can tell exactly how much water you're using. So we've talked a lot about impervious cover and the strong connection between the amount of impervious cover you have and impacts on water quality and impacts on the drainage system. So we used Nearmap, which is a way for us to get better impervious cover mapping than we could get at using like state data. Bless you.
Excuse me.
So we felt like we had pretty good impervious cover mapping. And we looked at that on a per parcel basis. And then as we were developing some rate structure alternatives and looking at the rate model, what we decided is we wanted to use an equivalent residential unit. And so this is a really common way of setting up a stormwater utility fee. So instead, because we don't have survey grade impervious cover mapping, like we're not looking at per square foot. What we did was we looked at the median amount of impervious area on a single family residential property, which is 3,200 square feet. Did I write that down?
Yes.
Right. 3,200 square feet. So use that unit to figure out how many ERUs could be charged to each billable property.
Emily, may I leap in?
Yes.
So, because I'm not mathematically inclined, I'm not an engineer, I think I'm the one who should talk about this because I struggle with understanding about it. So what it is. Let's say, so let's just suspend the commercial and public properties for a minute and think about the single families, right? And what Emily just described is a way of arriving at one number simply, and this is important because what we didn't want to do was get engineers out there with measuring tape and measure every single unit or lot available for single family residence, because the expense of that would be so great that it would offset any gains that any individual homeowner might expect. They say, well, I have very little. Well, you know what? The decrease would be so little and the increase for others are a little bit more, so negligible in the big picture that it makes sense to arrive at one average, 3,200 square feet. Now, that's an ERU, an equivalent residence unit. So later, when we go to other properties that are larger, which are like multifamily properties, apartment complexes, industrial properties, manufacturing, commercial, etc. What we're gonna do is take that ERU is the equivalent of 3,200 square feet of impermeable area. So if you had 9,600 feet of impermeable areas, for example, that would be equivalent to 3 units, 3 ERUs. I'm seeing nodding heads, so everyone's following me so far. This is really important because what it's not, and this is important, what it's not is if there's a multifamily, we don't go, oh, there's 10 units here and then multiply by 10. Wrong, that's not the way it works. You look at the impermeable surface area of the multifamily lot and that divide that by 3,200, which is the ERU, to arrive at what that number is, which will always be consistent, will generally be consistently less than simply multiplying the ERU by the number of available units. Thank you.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just had to, just keep in mind that we're not reinventing a wheel. Many of the, the communities we've shown before are doing it the same way. So this is not new.
Yep. Yeah, so based on our analysis, we felt like even though there is definitely variability with single family residential properties, and of course you've got some more modest homes with less pavement, and then you have some larger homes with a pool and patio and more pavement. There wasn't enough of a range in air. It was a pretty normal distribution. We felt pretty safe in saying, let's use a flat fee for all single family residential. So single family residential, your fee is your fee. It's 1 ERU. You don't need to necessarily agonize over, measuring your impervious cover. So then for non-single family residential properties, and so we use non-single family residential or NSFR for like large residential, multifamily residential, commercial, industrial properties are lumped into that category. So that is going to be we'll call it a proportional fee. So as Jonathan explained, you take your total impervious cover, divide by the 3,200 square feet, which is the ERU, you get a number of ERUs, round it to a whole number, and you multiply it by the fee per ERU. And I'll go through a couple examples. Oh yeah, go ahead. I'm clicking it on my computer.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so this is an example of, so to Pheasant Circle. You can see the impervious area is almost exactly the ERU. It's 3,190 square feet. It is going to be charged 1 ERU. You can see how the impervious cover was measured.
Sorry, yeah.
No, that's okay. And then, so this is an example of a commercial property. 11 Willow Road, the impervious area is 68,542 square feet, and so this would be 22 ERUs.
Because you divided 68,542 by 3,200.
Yes.
That gets you get that.
Anyone
Yep.
has a calculator, you can check, but.
Okay. So we do have a slide here too, and what the work group has recently done, and this is on the work group's website, is put up a parcel viewer so that anybody can go on there and see how many ERUs their property is calculated to have.
Now, if you move
I'll
that,
see if I can get out of here. Oops.
it's like you could scan it from your phone if you wanted to look up your property.
Yeah, I do have it here to
Yeah.
kind of run it. People online, can you see the property viewer? I gotta share that. I gotta share it.
Yes.
Okay, hold
You
on.
can see it.
I think it's a share screen, right? That'd be better. Then when I move around, it goes to here. Okay. All right, here we go, property viewer. So there's a disclaimer in here, kind of explanation of the fees that are calculated. So we can close that, but here is the online property viewer. So you can go into here, zoom in, for example, we were looking at 11 Willow Road. So if I click on that parcel, it's taking a minute to load. Now that pulls up some information on the right here, which is what we calculated. Actually, it says 21 ERUs. So what probably happened was there was a recalculation done. We had done further refinement to our model between my presentation slide and the parcel viewer. So that's why it's off by 1. But you can go to any parcel, you'd like to in here. Either single family residential. So this is available online. So I'd encourage you to do. See, it's slightly higher than 3,200, but once again, it's single family residential. Right here, so it's 1 ERU.
If you move the little Zoom box there, you can enter your address in that, find an address, which is right under that box.
Oh, yeah, you can type in an
Yes.
address here as well.
Very important.
Yeah. So just in short, wanted to give you a quick demonstration that that's available online. And it's in this presentation. The presentation will get posted on the web. I can email it to those. If you'd want to email me, I can email to the people I reached out to, just to make sure you get it. So that's the next
Yeah,
slide.
before we leave that,
Yeah,
while we're talking to the largest property owners with the most impervious cover, look at your properties. If you see the impervious cover mapping and it looks really off, that's information that we would love to have. It's easier for us to do that now. I guess it's not harder to do it later necessarily. We will have an abatement, I think we'll probably talk about it, but we will have an abatement process for the exact same reason. So if 6 months from now, this, it's in effect and you realize the mapping is totally off and your bill is wrong, you come in and you just explain it and show how, it's inaccurate, and then DPW will look into it. But yeah, that feedback would be great to have that now if you see something wrong.
good point.
Okay,
Okay, so getting to the rate.
yes.
There it is, what you've been waiting for.
Yeah.
This
We
is
appreciate your patience.
me, right? So this is. Okay, so. All right, so the evolution of our draft rate structure. So we considered a number of different alternatives, as the working group, like we batted around a number of ideas, different levels of service, different ways to do the rate structure. So ultimately, and I guess part of that vetting process too, is we really looked at. We started out with a cost that I think was probably reasonable for funding all of the town's needs. But we really worked hard to refine the budget and to spread projects out, to what was reasonable and what could be accomplished to make the revenue requirements, I think, practical. I think that's
Yeah.
where we ended up.
And
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, you can.
So I want to underline what Emily's saying here. If you're wondering what's taken so long, we've been working on this since the previous September, which is almost a year now. This is why. This is what's absorbed most of our time and attention, is figuring out what's fair. So what we're doing is we're balancing two things. Realistic appraisal of the needs, what's out there, and what needs to be done. What's a fair fee to impose on the people of Bear? What's fair and right? So as Emily said, we could calculate, we don't need X amount of work, and then to do it, we came up with a level of service that if we wanted everything done within 3 to 5 years. We came at a number that's much higher than $95 a year for the SRU, ERU, I'm sorry. And we thought that's not right either. That's, yes, it's good to have all that work done, but the fee's too high. So then we said, well, what if we move our expectations down a bit and spread the projects out and figured out a way to finance the big capital ones? Where can we put the right level of service with a fair payment? I think where we landed, and also where we presented about a month ago to the community, we had a major, like 4 to 6 weeks ago, input meeting, and this seemed to be the consensus that this level of service at this fee seemed to be the right balance, seemed to be the best balance. Emily?
Yep, exactly,
Yeah.
okay.
Thanks.
So our total planning budget, like on average, again, with ups and downs that Dan showed on a previous slide, is about $700,000 a year. We are looking at, but the town currently as a policy uses debt for any projects over $50,000 just to improve cash flow. You know, as the stormwater utility is implemented, if it's implemented, we would be looking to like build up some retained earnings, so we would not have to borrow for projects of that size. I think we'd be looking to save and then, like you would do with your household, save and then make the big purchase instead of borrowing.
Can we add to this? Is, forgive me, Emily, important note to make is that at this level at $95 per ERU, that includes the debt service for those big projects. So it's not like, okay, we got 95 per ERU to meet $700,000 budget. No, it's not just that. That $95 in that budget includes the debt service for those big projects. You don't have to fear that, oh, with this, that then we're gonna come and ask the town for more money or more support or something for those big ones. No, this accounts for that. It's in the math.
Yeah, in the math as well, we made a sort of policy decision that we would like to keep about $200,000 on the general fund to cover vehicles and highway salaries. We just thought maybe let's not pull that into the enterprise fund budget at this time. So there's a small portion that remains in the general fund raised through taxes, and the rest is with the enterprise fund.
Right, there's a lot of crossover usage of the highway
Exactly.
and the stormwater management, so it really made sense to do that. No,
Yep. So the regulations, which you can see posted on the website that Dan mentioned, we just needed to lay out the foundation of, again, how is this gonna work? Who has authority to make these decisions? So the select board will be the authority governing the stormwater utility program. Ultimately, the select board will set rates. The rate review committee would look at them first and make a recommendation, but that would ultimately go to the select board. So what's important is there's a public process. So it's not, this doesn't end here. There are many steps along the way and steps every year to weigh in on any rate adjustments or rate structure modifications.
yeah, can I put in a plug? The rate review committee that can use more participation. Currently, we look at water and sewer rates and solid waste rates. But if anyone's interested, you can let me know.
And so some key things that needed to be defined in those regulations were credits. So the credits are just loosely defined in the regulations, but it is specifically included as a piece of the program that's important. Impervious area we've talked about, that's defined in the regulations. And we also define like undeveloped land. Any parcel that has less than 300 square feet of impervious cover isn't gonna get it though. We established in the regulations the process to establish the fees. So again, starting with DPW, looking at their budget, which still will be before town meeting. So again, another chance to weigh in on what's in the budget, and then that feeds into the development of adjusted rates each year. There's exemptions in the regulations. You'll see, I could pull that up after if anyone is curious about it, but you'll see like we're not charging municipal properties a fee. We're not charging a fee for any right of way. And then the credit policy will apply to all property types. So again, this is, some towns have chosen not to offer any credits for like residential properties, but we thought it was important to have an even playing field for that. And then the regulations lay out the billing and collections and abatement, so there's a process for all of that too.
Yeah, and so we'll mention again, but this is all the draft of the fees, the rates, the regulations are all up on the website. Oh, this is the meeting you were talking about, John. Yeah,
2 months ago, wow.
yeah, so on June 24th, 2024, we had a public information and input forum. It was in the Great Hall upstairs from here and on Zoom. We had like over 50 participants, a lot of engagement there. And we did take in a lot of good feedback from the public as well to better refine the rates, regulations, and credit policy. So the meeting video and materials from that meeting are up available on our website. That's the ultimate repository, has everything up there from the group. So in summary, from what we've just presented, the proposed annual fee is $95 per ERU. So 1 ERU equals $95. And the second bullet under draft rates, you can see the calculation for a non-single family residential property. So you just multiply the number of ERUs times $95, that would be the annual fee. All properties are eligible for up to a 50% credit of that fee, and there's details in the credit policy, the draft credit policy, which is up on the website within our stormwater document. So I keep saying this, but visit the website, that has everything. It has frequently asked questions, document, videos, outreach materials, and more. And especially also, we did show you the online property viewer, so you could actually see the ERUs and see the impervious area on the property. Natalie mentioned, or not Natalie, sorry, Emily mentioned reviewing that. So next steps for the work group. So town council will be reviewing that stormwater, the draft rates regulation credit policy document. And we're going to continue our outreach and present findings to the Air Select Board likely next month. So we really want to reach out to the businesses today as a courtesy, informational, let you know that this is going on, and we appreciate you guys listening to us. So if you have any questions, you can send them to me, but we can also answer some now. We have a little bit of time, so if I guess we can open up the floor. Thanks for listening to us. Stop share.
I have a general question. Is this gonna, it sounded like this applies to property owners, maybe determined by those that pay the taxes on the property? Is that correct?
Yes, the bill would be to the property owner. Yeah, okay.
Okay, thank you. So, and just for, sorry, for transparency's sake, I'm trying to figure out, for the Berkshire and Easter, we're not a property owner of the railroad, but we operate on top of it. So I didn't know if this would, it sounds like it's going to the owner of the land.
Yeah.
In this case.
Is listed as Pan-Am in that
Okay.
case. Yep.
It's still Pan-Am, right?
Yep.
CJ?
Yeah.
I forget the way you say it. What was your name?
Emily.
Emily. She had mentioned that it's easier for now, if we have a discrepancy on the ERUs of our property to bring it up to this. I don't know, I agree, it's gonna be a lot easier than going through an abatement process, because when I look at mine, I can only speak for me. I have questions on mine, how the square footage is figured at Whitefield Cooley. You probably figured it out, but from looking at that map, that leaves some questions.
What's your address? There's no-
22 West Main, 217, but I got a bunch of them.
Yeah,
22
the
West
big
Main.
one
It's
is
22.
22 West Main, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And then another thing I saw, and I just looked this morning, somewhere on there, you click and it shows the 3 different levels you guys had on ERU rates, which is frightening at first, because the top one's $260 in ERU.
Rejected, yep, but
Yeah,
That's still up there.
to show the options that.
Okay,
We
that wasn't-
consider, but reject, yes.
That wasn't
Yeah, so-
clear to me. So the number you guys settled on is, well, per se is 95 moving forward with the.
right. So
Correct.
the 260 was, let's implement the ideal situation, do all the work. And then we work down from there, reduce scope, make sure level of service, financial viability, make sure it would work out. We started there and worked our way.
Yeah, like if you had everything on your wish list. on the
Exactly.
Stormwater wish list, that's how much it would cost, but.
Right. But we realize that's not practical or,
Yeah.
So I have a two-part question then. So, based on what my colleague here said, so the NSFR, that's the same as commercial?
Yep.
Okay, it was unclear from the reading. I looked for everywhere. I mean, I wish you guys would call it commercial.
Well, NSFR is more than commercial.
I understood, but
Yeah,
commercial
I see
is
this
in that,
point, yeah.
commercial does fit in under that though,
It
yes.
does fit under
Okay.
that.
I would
Okay.
be confused too, I, you know.
It is a little, yeah. it-
So I mean, you know, I read it as non-single family residential. The residential that threw me because a commercial property is non-residential.
Right.
So.
That is confusing.
Anyway, so how do you anticipate any credits affecting the rate going forward? So again, if everyone can get 50% credit, then $95 isn't gonna work.
we have, I don't know if you want to speak to it, Emily, but as we did the modeling and figuring of this, there was a factor put in for anticipated credits
Okay.
from properties, so it has been factored into that rate.
Great.
Yep. Yeah,
Good eye.
Yeah.
Rate stability does help in future planning.
It sure does.
Yeah. for
Yeah,
business.
we built in a percentage in the rate model, assuming between abatements and credits, we'd be, giving back a portion of revenue.
Great.
Any other questions? Anyone online? All right, well, really.
You mentioned an application, is that, I couldn't find that, is that done yet?
The credit application?
Yes.
So it is in draft form. If you go to the stormwater document on the web. It's at the very back. It's kind of in the appendix of the
Mhm.
regulations. So it'd be at the very back.
It's on like page 17 is the credit
Yeah.
policy, and then,
So
Oh,
there's
no,
no
wait, the
specific
application form
application
isn't
yet,
there.
though, right?
Oh, it's not on there? Oh. Thought it would.
that's a great catch.
Yeah.
It was in that meeting.
Yeah,
We'll get that up.
Okay.
yeah,
I like to plan ahead.
it is,
Yeah,
yeah, it has been drafted. It is there,
Okay, great.
so we'll make sure we get
Thank
it
you.
there.
Did we say the obvious yet, that the bill would come in with the ordinary quarterly water sewer bill, that this would be, did we mention that? That's.
So it hasn't been fully vetted yet, but that's what we anticipate. I initially looked into that. We can add the stormwater billing to our water and sewer billing software. So I would anticipate it would just get added as a quarterly charge on the bill.
Yeah, I just mentioned that, so that, for single family resident, that's $23.75 a quarter. And the reason we like rolling it into that bill is that means we don't have to add another person on staff to manage all this, that we're trying to keep the administrative costs as low as possible so that the fee costs can be as low as possible.
Right. Okay. All right, well, I'm still around, we're all still around the work group. If you have questions after this, feel free to reach out, and I definitely encourage you to look at the website. It has a lot of good information, more than this presentation has. All right,
Thank you, Dan.
thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Robert, for future reference,